first edition of the Nahar Jito Bookathon presented in association with the Raisoni Foundation. In this session, we shall be delving into the transformative world of the rather interestingly worded book Mentor Morphosis, which is a profound account by the multifaceted and immensely successful Mr. Akash Khurana. Most people struggle at the very outset. How do you find an excellent mentor, and how do you get that person to mentor you? Frankly, it really is just about serendipity. The thing is to just keep your antennae alert, and if it is meant to be, you will find the right one. Else, there's no other choice but to keep searching. As Buddha said, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. How often do we recall the major achievements in our lives and celebrate them? Do we spend enough time remembering the significant people and the incidents that influenced our lives? Do we look back and cherish the contribution of our mentors? In Mentor Morphosis, Mr. Akash Khurana chronicles how his mentors shaped the early years of his life, and with that as reference, he generates a model of various mentoring stages and mentor types that may be applicable to everyone's lives. Readers are then guided to revisit their own mentoring history and recall certain learnings that could enrich their perspective on their journey into the future. By sharing experiences through a memoir, the author replicates the tradition of storytelling, where emotionally compelling tales are handed down over generations. Based on his own experiences in management, academics, media, and the performing arts, Mr. Khurana believes that developing a passion can be creative and it unleashes the leader in you, which is an imminent stairway to excellence. Mentor Morphosis stimulates answers to the very interestingly poised question, how do you find a mentor who can fuel that passion in you? Now, Mr. Akash Khurana is a compulsive and consummate multitasker who has segued between theatre, film, television, academia, and corporate life for over 4 decades. He's an engineer with an MBA and an MPhil and a PhD, and he has taught at several business schools, and his corporate roles included marketing executive, HR advisor, chief creative officer, and CEO. He has written over 20 screenplays, most of which have culminated into massively successful feature films, including Bazigar, which won a Filmfare Award in its time. He has also acted in nearly 60 films and won the Nandi Award for playing the lead in the Telugu film Dr. Ambedkar. The River of Love, which is a feature film directed by him, has garnered a lot of international awards, and in theatre, he has been a core member of some of India's leading theatre companies. His production of Vijay Tendulkar's A Friend's Story was performed at the Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London. As we explore Mr. Khurana's insights, we're privileged to have an outstanding moderator who is perfectly suited to guide us through this session. We have Dr. Mrinal Nayak, who is a versatile academician and accomplished administrator who holds a PhD in business management, an MBA, and a diverse array of expertise in commerce, law, music, and literature. With over 15 years of enriching experience in her industry, including banking and leadership roles in prestigious educational institutions like Raisoni Education, she excels in project management, HR, and strategic planning. She serves as the project director of the Orange City Literature Festival, and she's played a pivotal role in its inception and its growth. As the TEDx/Civil Lines licensee and organizer, Ms. Mrinal Nayak contributed significantly to the dissemination of transformative ideas.
So thank you so much. Welcome to the first edition of Nahar Jito Bookathon. And in this session, I am with Mr. Akash Khurana. Thank you so much for the introduction. I would start with the concept of requesting sir to tell us what encouraged him to enter into writing this book.
Okay, a long story, trying to do it short. The book is called Mentor Morphosis. I think the meaning becomes clear if you stay with it. It's about how mentors bring about a change in mentees, and the subcaption is Mentor Morphosis, Stories for Mentoring the Leader in You. Now, basically, the rationale for writing this book was a lot of people were wanting me to share my thoughts, and when it came to my experiences, which actually span film, television, corporate affairs, media, academia. The issue was, if I were to write something, what would be on? And the common thread apparently, and someone advised me, one of my students actually advised me, could be mentoring in all areas, which means I could take my journey, my own journey, and then speak about mentoring in various fields. Uh, so what I did was, while I was sort of chronicling my journey, I built mentor types. I created nomenclature of the kinds of mentors people encounter in the various stages of their life. Depending on what stage they are at, what kind of mentor is satisfying their particular need at that time, uh, through the journey. And this eventually became a model which I call the mentor morphosis model. And there are 14 mentor types in this model. And most of them are original nomenclatures that I developed. And then the second part of the book is, of course, asking the reader to go through the journey of their own lives and do a retrospect and an introspection on their mentors and see what learnings they can sort of bring to their lives in the present day. The third part is my experience in the performing arts area. The next is about creative mentors, mentoring for creativity. And the last chapter is mentoring for the future. And this has several references to the pandemic and, how adversity needs to be combated by mentees, especially in the millennials and actually mostly in Gen Z kind of groups. And yeah, so that's it. So that's a basic in a nutshell. Book is available, so anyone who's really interested in mentoring can have a look at it. Yeah, but the rationale was really some of my mentors and mentees coaxed me actually in sort of putting down my thoughts on paper. Yeah.
You said that there are 14 parts and different steps of mentorship. So, before entering into the detailed area, can we discuss about the first step? The first step for parents. Parents play a crucial role in their children's
Okay.
development. Often
Interesting.
being the first mentors, we say, and you have included it as a major part in your book. Based on your experience and the insights from your book, what strategies do you recommend for parents to become effective bedrock mentors for their children?
Interesting. So actually, there are two categories before bedrock mentors. One is an iconic mentor. That's how I start my book, which is my role model. The second is prenatal mentors. Actually, mentors is a theory, hypothesis that mentors actually happen before you're born because of ancestrage. Now, the third category, which you mentioned, is bedrock mentors, and parents and teachers are part of it. Uh, to simplify, uh, there's an analogy basically that if you look at parents as parents, they are tending the soft clay that's with them, and if parents are mentors, then they're giving shape to that clay. So that's the difference in thought. Primarily, I think it's about not pushing the child and nurturing the child for just understanding what's values, what's passion, and leading from the front and inspiring them. And essentially, it comes down to the right mix, nurturing them by by demonstration, as it were, in their own daily lives, to to find the right balance between freedom and discipline.
Okay. So when we are finding a right balance between freedom and discipline, somehow while growing up, somewhere at one point you feel like basing yourself at something. Like in today's achievement oriented society, many young people struggle with the basing their self worth on external validation. They seek for the external validation more.
Absolutely.
So in that case, what are some practical ways to teach children and young adults to base their self-worth on personal growth rather than external achievements?
Understood. So the problem is really top down with the parents. The child is naive enough to follow what the parents sort of set standards for. And I think if and it's becoming increasingly difficult. You are in academics, I've been through. How do you remove the word competition and vis-a-vis that shortcomings and failure based on comparisons with what goes on in society, even as close as the neighbor's house? So and so's child does this. You must at least max come to that level or supersede, and then actually show disappointment if the child doesn't reach there. And it's lonely at the top. There's only so much, so many people that can really achieve. So your standards should stop being, say, Harvard at one end or a CEO or a top of the line. And the key for that is really the threshold of needs that the parents establish for themselves, which is really celebrate the child for what she or he stands for. That it's your own child. It's not your own child vis-a-vis other children in society or what you yourselves did. That becomes another intimidating threat. That my father was like this, my mother was like this. How do I match up to them? So there's competition in house if you set standards of that kind. So basically, find ways to celebrate the child. And the only achievement, and that's the target you must set for the child, is learning and growth. In your search for excellence, just try this long onward journey of continuing to learn and grow. Be a better version of yourself the next day rather than worry about bettering other people.
Going out of a track a bit, you are experienced in all the areas, I must say. Like whether it is writing, acting, business, studies, PhD,
Okay.
everything you did. So now there is one more concept called OTT, web series. So today's generation is more inclined towards like such kind of theories where they feel that this is something which is right.
Ah, so
And
so you're talking about what technology and media provide as an environment for the child to relate to? Is that what you're saying?
um, more of an environment, how these new thoughts that picturized in front of them changes. Like when movies were there, at that time there was a disclaimer, धूम्रपान करना हानिकारक है.
Correct, correct.
Now they are Netflix generation people. There is no such disclaimer, nothing like that, and they believe on that. If they are watching, sorry to mention, if they are watching Hira Mandi, so they will believe that this is the exact thing what they are watching, and this is how the things are. If they are watching some, won't mention the name. If they are watching some थोड़ा सा fighting या the
No,
languages.
I understand. So typically, uh, so society is evolving, so is media. There is openness, and now, as you said,
Yes,
one needs to actually today you can actually customize to one person in an audience.
yes,
Because of technology. So earlier also there used to be 80, simple binary of 18 years old adults. Even Nagpur cinemas used to have at 16, if I wanted to see a film, I used to color my this upper lip mustache with an eyebrow pencil and say, "Oh, 16, अरे मालूम है sir, आप 16 but अच्छा आ जाओ, 16 is safe." That's the kind of fight. But I'm saying with so much openness, let's just pause for a minute and say right now you're talking really about a child but a grown-up child. We have passed the stage of a bedrock parent mentor, on
Yes.
the threshold of maybe a high school teacher, and what is
Yes.
now critical, a frientor, which is a category in my book.
Yes.
What is the company and peer group advisory that you have at present when you're watching the likes of Hiramandi or whatever else you don't want to name? Now, the question is, you and I in our time might not have had such openness of content, but given, how do I say, the sign of those times, they themselves would have been in the whatever prohibitory area or so. And choices were made. Choices, parents, what would the world say? Sometimes bad company. Now, the question here is, if you're fortunate, you will see the true light. And here is something else that we can talk about another time. It's called relevant morality. Morality is no longer black and white. His cook is also about watching something that affects you or not. Someone sees it, it doesn't get affected. It says it's okay. I have my own life. This is their statement, and I'm vulnerable at another point, and I'm saying I'm getting affected. But let us be also optimistic in that society has checks and balances and situations where you are provided security by society. That if you want to go wayward, there will be a protection of some kind, informal, of legal, formal, where the moral guardians stay. How much they can control you or guide you is a separate thing. And then it comes down to really how fortunate or unfortunate you are, because you see the world around you. It's a cautionary tale that you want to approach by mentioning this topic. But I'm saying again, the bedrock mentors have played their part. If they played their part well, then that affectation, that influence that you're talking about will not happen. If they've set their passion in the proper things of life and their values, which unconsciously a child would have absorbed, this is the right way, that is not the right way, then perhaps OTT. Why OTT? You're still being in formal structure. The mobile has access to, you know, that technology gives you access to stuff that, I mean, you can't even formalize. So, and everyone has access to that. So, again, what are the moral checks and balances, the legal checks and balances, the guardians, who is watching to sort of make you mature? And I come from another thing that really you should be guiding in a way that the choices are the individuals,
Yes.
whichever path they want to take. And if they want to take a path, then maybe they learn from maybe the punishments, the penalization that occurs later. You learn from your mistakes. You say, okay, oh, this is what happens. So it's like the stick, the corporal punishment in schools. Oh, the cane hit me today, so obviously kneel down is bad. Standing on the bench or outside the classroom is bad. So I should or should not. Whether I become a brat or eventually just say, this is the line society wants me to toe, it becomes a personal kind of choice.
So somehow at one point, now stepping one more step, like moving further. So at one point, it is very important now to focus more on emotional intelligence.
Absolutely.
So when we are focusing on emotional intelligence, then EQ or what I can say, authentic leadership are frequently mentioned in discussion about
Oh, I understand.
mentorship. So moving on to the further question, I would like to ask, like from your perspective, how do these traits overlap, and why are they crucial for the effective mentorship?
Okay, so this is wonderful that you're mentioning emotional intelligence. Uh, Although now we are talking in a slightly more structured way when it comes to say learning and develop how to make a person more emotionally intelligent or raise the person's EQ, the emotional quotient. But actually, your previous issue that we were talking about is really about that. Perhaps a person who's been subjected to such kind of stimuli from society could well combat it better if her or his EQ was better. There's a sensibility that comes with EI, and again, the ball is back in more your court than mine when it comes to education, because if you organizationally, whether in academia or in corporate life or wherever else, wherever organizations exist, bring about the culture of EI, which is really being considerate to others and putting yourself in the other person's position, realizing what the other person's feelings are. And I think today, especially with technology, and I was just speaking on AI recently, 3 days ago, to a group of chief information officers. None of those presentations mentioned anything remotely connected to emotional intelligence. All hard AI, HR analytics, hardcore applications. They, by doing that, are actually diminishing the human beings important in any case. The fact is, humans will not be redundant, but you must realize that and actually make the artificial intelligence user friendly to the extent they become your support systems as
Yes.
quasi humans, if not humans. Robots with a sensibility which is human. Anyway, that's another domain. But speaking about EI and authentic leadership, so for those interested, actually, there was a Harvard professor called Bill George who developed this concept of authentic leadership. Leadership has gone through about 40, 50 years of evolution, transformation, basically all heading towards the human relations school of management, where human beings matter. It's not about getting the task done or profitability or shareholders. It's just also about keeping the people who work with you, all stakeholders, happy. Uh, so, authentic leadership, according to this Harvard professor called Bill George, had those leaders had characteristics of which were like, say, uh, vision, purpose, passion, self-discipline, compassion, relationships. Now, typically, if you speak of EI and emotionally intelligent, say, mentors or leaders, then that overlap becomes very clear. Because essentially, mentors, and I'll speak about mentoring since that's my book, are actually leaders in a way because they are guiding people and they're facilitating, and they have the potential to energize people to discover the best in themselves, to do better, and that essentially is leadership. So in fact, mentoring and so emotionally intelligent mentoring and authentic leadership have these common traits, which are actually at the basic. I mean, for the common layperson, the two things that really matter are empathy. One, actually, only empathy. If you look at empathy, compassion, everything else follows. And for those who want sort of a far more detailed model of the attributes of what emotional intelligence constitutes, then there's no better author till date than Daniel Goleman. He writes a lot about emotional intelligence, and he has 5 constructs that are attributes of emotional intelligence, which are self-awareness, self-regulation, social skills, motivation, and empathy, of course.
So, sorry again.
Why? Why? Sorry.
So, when we are talking about empathy, again, I'm going back. Don't you think that this empathy concept was previously embedded by the elders in children through their style of storytelling and giving the details through the stories, the connect that they were making through one thing to another, and then accordingly going further? You are a best storyteller, I know that. And storytelling is something which is into which is a part of our culture since ages, like whether that story is of Rama or Bible or Mahabharata. So was that a major part which was playing in the children at that time to build the empathy and EI and all?
So this is wonderful because today what we are discussing right now in my books and what we are giving labels of empathy, true, because and that's how education evolves, learning evolves. That you sort of s- strategize and stratify everything into segments where you say, okay, such things exist. But I was giving again an example of history that I, over 6 decades, have seen uh, computing and information technology evolve from a slide rule, log tables to today. I have a smartphone in my pocket and run the entire system. But why I told this story, this was my story, exactly proves the point that you're making, is I wanted those senior technologists to realize what preceded it, what went into the achievements, the efforts of the predecessors that went into the achievements of today. Because as they say, those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. And clearly, the only, and trust me, this is magical when you talk about storytelling has lasted since the time civilization, from since the time civilization began, because there was truth in it
Yes.
in one or two ways. One was, and that's the key. So, when we talk about form and content, talk about entertainment content, there's content which could be abstract, could be difficult, could be easy, but there's a form. Storytelling is the simplest form of communication. And the key reason for it is it entertains and absorbs. Rather than a theory with 5 bullet points on the blackboard, if I convert that into a story, I have
Correct.
got the hook on. Now, if that hook leads to a principle, that principle will stay. See your life and mine. So, so also when you're telling a story, whoever it is, the storyteller, the story reveals something about you also. The way you say it, what you believe in, how you tell that story, what kind of story you're telling, and that builds a kind of trust building that this person I want to relate to, and it evokes trust. So the first point in evoking mutual trust is really telling stories emotionally and personal stories, which means more relatable stories. And mentoring is really about that, how mentors and mentees equate themselves. So, maybe I call it experiential empathy in storytelling. That if you tell about yourself, and it's exemplary in some way, or it demonstrates your failures and what not to do or what to do, then there's a buy in which is immediate. So, storytelling works because of that. And emotional stories always work because the hook becomes better. And if they are impactful, what is interesting, and that will happen in any organization worth its name, is that some impactful stories become folklore and they add to the legacy. What the founder did, how charismatic was J.R.D. Tata, what did Jamshed Tata do to give the Tata example, in steel manufacturing. And then suddenly you find stories that are impactful become folklore and become legacies that lead to becoming the organizational culture of an organization automatically, because the stories are more accessible. It's not vision document, mission document, strategy document. It's a story about something, an experience. And as far as the skills basically are concerned, let's not go into again the craft of writing screenplays or whatever. That's there. I mean, all art needs craft. But the basics is get rid of your inhibitions, just express yourself. Be honest because they see through it. Emotional storytelling needs to be honest. Otherwise, you see an honest communicator and a slightly for the optics kind of, you'll see the difference. You were struggling for Gyan. So whatever the charm or the charisma that a speaker or a storyteller uses, all valid. There are techniques. But honesty and lack of inhibition, two critical things which come, which are say, heart led, which is EI led. But if you speak on humans having machine intelligence, reversing, flipping the paradigm, then there is no substitute, Nural, whether it's your institute or my students. Communication skills, SMS, short form, emojis, no substitute if you want to be a storyteller. Written and speech, read to write. I mean, that to my mind, all these NEETs and CATs and all should actually have only communication tests, even IITs, because eventually that's what's going to lend to life skills, which are really important. Functional core skills, to take care. Degrees give you that, some life gives you that sometimes on the job. But storytelling, essentially by virtue of its name, storytelling, has to have top class communication skills.
Correct. So, up to a certain extent, and we can think that the style of storytelling, even in organizations also, it builds a supporting environment for mentorship, maybe a supporting environment for mentoring in the organization. So, what steps can organizations take to cultivate a culture of mentorship and emotional learning? Because storytelling, fine, but communication is again required, proper use of words again required, and then with the storytelling, the motivation and supporting environment is to be created. So, how these organizations should, or
Okay.
what kind of steps they should take to cultivate the culture of mentorship and emotional learning?
So basically, what they should do is already what you just mentioned. Simple. As you say, now, how do you write? You write. Write if you want to write. Create an organizational culture where mentoring makes sense, where EI makes sense. The buck will always stop at how. And the way forward, not generally, but next steps. If hypothetically, and charity begins at home, say, let me put this, because right now I'm less organization, you are more organization. And it's possible that already that culture is there with the Raisoni group. I believe in some way it's there. If you exemplify the culture, it's there, according to me, because I've had interactions with you. I know what you as an individual are. If you represent even half of what the organization stands for, then it's very good. So it's there, and that's why I'm risking telling you this. As an exercise, bring about something, and see, basically it's HR led, learning and development. And academia is all about learning and development. And when we talk about in organizations in HR about train the trainers, you are assuming that someone in-house can train. But has that person been trained to train? And training is not about your functional or core skills. It's about your other parameters, the other competencies, not job skills. So the question is, how do you, even more difficult, mentor a mentor? If mentoring has to become part of a culture, you need to have mentors who are capable. And I think really in what we've just spoken about, find one good, and not about you. You too will win every battle. I'm talking about find someone in the company, your school or college institute, who's a great storyteller. So I'm making it simple. Rather than find what mentoring traits or psychographic Myers-Briggs tests. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying best storyteller कौन है apart from Ronald Like. हाँ मतलब you are doing that no, but 2000 years you're actually doing influencer work for the Mahabharata. So you are a role model, but I'm saying one person doesn't make an organization. No, so culture comes from other people. So and if you were to be mentor, Then you find a mentee who will become a mentor. Let's do succession planning and mentoring. And let's start with you. So find a storyteller who's great and can become a mentor, and find a group of potential mentors with psychographics, two, three people in any department. Could be sports, could be arts, could be Orange City Lit Fest, any department. Do a pilot, and that itself will sort of cast the first stone in your progression towards building and eventually a culture which is part of HR, learning and development. Now, if the mentor, you or whoever the guide is, actually wants to make a tangible best practices, a formal version of a process that's truly informal. And that's the reason mentoring is not working in organizations. During induction, 1 week, someone is assigned to you as a mentor, a buddy, or whatever, rest is forgotten. Then you're on your own, company, job, 9 to 5 and beyond, work pressure, finished, no mentoring. So if you were to make it a best practices HR document, then call it. So you can, I mean, if I was speaking to technologists, I called it an EI vision. But since we are talking storytelling or mentoring or whatever, reduce it. So within your training and development cell, even if you don't have a chief mentoring officer, which is my organizational dream, Joby, whoever's talking about mentoring and we believe, I said, show me one person in your company who is totally responsible, accountable for mentoring. Not one, Ronald. Not one. CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, is utopia. But earlier it used to be personnel managers, HR, then CHROs. Well, the vice president was the topmost thing. Then you have CLOs, Chief Learning Officers, Chief Technology Officer, Chief Marketing, Chief Communication, Chief Creative. If mentoring is so important and everyone believes it is, why is there no CMO, Chief Mentoring Officer? So that's another story. But I'm saying what I'm trying to tell you is in academia to build up a culture where you actually have a vision, like you state in organization, a mentoring vision statement, a mentoring mission statement, and a mentoring strategy sort of points. And see where it goes from here. I mean, otherwise it'll all be a pipe dream. It's one of those wonderful things which you're talking about, that values is good. Like we spoke about bedrock, values are good. How do you instill them? You go out of the house, go to the club, go to the mall, and the other parent says, "My child to got how is she? Why don't you give coaching classes? I'm sending to so and so, and now they're going abroad also. They've done so well. You're screwed. When you come back, you're finished by that time. So, what values? How do you fight it? The world is a bad place. Environments are not friendly at all. It's getting worse. But we can't lose hope. You and I are there. We can't lose hope.
But it's a challenge.
Of course, it's a challenge.
And you're putting challenges in front of organizations to appoint a chief mentoring officer and then deal with the challenge again.
I will do it. I'll keep doing that. And each time I go, I sell 100 copies. I say, don't pay me. Give gifts to your participants, and I give them gali income. I say, this is what you've done. You're losers.
So when we are talking that mentoring is not something which is without challenge, then based on your extensive experience, what challenges have you faced as a mentor? And how did you overcome them to continue supporting your mentees effectively? Because you only told right now that it is a toughest challenge.
Correct. So basically, charity begins at home. No one is perfect. Fate has assigned you a responsibility that happens to be of mentoring, whether as a teacher or whatever, a director. I'm a great believer in what the Japanese call kaizen. It's a manufacturing term. It means continuous improvement, which is what I mentioned when I was speaking about bedrock mentors. Learning and growth, be all and end all. So sometimes when, and it might happen to people who are very passionate and very emotional, that you tend to get carried away, especially when it comes to meeting targets, whether in marketing companies or whatever, manufacturing targets, calendar of academics, uh, delivering performances and quality work. You set standards that you believe are high for you, but attainable, hence it will be for the other person. And you tend to get a little unreasonable and impatient, if I were to use the words, and you tend to not become a good person. You tend to become a less likable person, let's say that, which is in its essence a barrier to communication and mentoring. That if I'm emotionally affecting someone in a not nice way, then probably what I want to say will be coercion, and the respect for the work will be a demand and not a command for delivering. You must command respect in that sense. And what I did after discovering that things are not as, because the the strengths and the pluses were a list of major sort of high praise. Vision, capabilities, long-term views, skill, passion, all that was in place. But the thorn on the side was things like abrupt, harsh, hard taskmaster, temperamental. Uh, and this I got to know by actually giving them a form, my mentees, a group, target group, focus group, and saying, if you want to be, and they love me for whatever I am otherwise. If you want to be with me, be honest. And all of them actually dared to be honest, sent it to me. And then that becomes the challenge. How do you self reflect and take action? And I'm still doing that from project to project, from moment to moment, sometimes from interaction to interaction. That impatience works in some forms, but patience is the true virtue. It's good because my training has been one where I've been delivering to mentors who are impatient. And it suits me because I'm quick. I want it done. I, why are you taking so much time? Now, moment I impose that system on somebody who's not equating with it, relating to it, that becomes an issue. So that's been one challenge in mentoring, and I'm trying to reform over time. And hopefully, feedback is that हाँ सुधर गया थोड़ा.
But sometimes, isn't it necessary to be a bit harsh when you are mentoring somebody?
So fine line, but then EQ and EI is exactly that. How much to push, how much to balance.
Yes. So many questions are there that these questions won't end. In your book, you discuss various facets of mentoring. And so many qualities also you have shared. But now to, proceeding towards conclusion of the session, like for sure, we would ask our viewers to read book. They will surely get all the details about the mentoring queries they have. But before closing, I just want to, like we discussed, that stories make positive impact and a strong impact and are powerful lessons for the people. So can you share a personal story of a significant mentoring experience? A
So,
story.
I'm torn between actually telling you that story and actually hoping the reader finds it in the book, because it needs that kind of scrutiny. It's really on which I've based a chapter called again, because it's, I think, academics. I should tell you, but I'll try and keep it sort of more general. It's what I call relevant morality. I mentioned that. So might as well go ahead with this. So during my final stages of my MBA, I wasn't a bad student. I was pretty good. Uh, and this is again pretty common in organizations. There was some faculty member who had an issue with me for whatever reason. Common society, small town. Uh, I don't want to speak about the details. It's had an issue. And that person was on a 3-member panel for my Viva. And at a postgraduate MBA XLRI level, Viva is a formality. Basically, it's just one more milestone. You've done it all, and you also got jobs, and everyone's placed. But it's good because it refreshes and sees actually gives you that confidence or not, as in my case. And I did moderately well. I'm sure. I mean, at least not
Yes, you
not
did.
not badly, or not the. It wasn't the worst performance. I'm sure there'll be others who would be as good or bad. So there were only 2 people. One, of course, never attended classes, so I can understand him, and the other was me, who were asked to do a reviva, which means technically I failed the viva. So there I am getting into the world with a great life and a qualification behind me. And I said, okay, so depression, but okay, whatever, life will go on. This won't make a difference. They won't. You don't lose a year or a semester. It's a reviver, and the idea is in its intended sense, it is that let him sort of refresh his knowledge and do a revival so that he's prepared for the world or whatever. The next panel happened. 3 different panelists, 2 extremely senior members. Like, I mean, anybody would respect them world over. That was the level of that faculty. And of course, a third person was there. You need 3, so there was a third. Those 2 were enough. And I was petrified that if the reviver goes bad, what will these people on the panel who think so highly of me, ulta, think about me? Because they know that he's got a reviver, we'll check it out. And this time I messed up the Viva. I could not answer one question, or maybe one, out of a whole 30, 20-minute odd. So I said, what? Then at the end of it, I said, what happens if I don't? I said, nothing, we'll have more revivers. They laughed it off. You are here for 2 more months, we'll have more. I went away next day, whether it was on the notice board or a letter. I passed the Viva, and the comment was weakness, none observed.
Oh,
Now, this is where I think a game changing or a responsible mentor comes in. Are you going the black and white way? Or you know this person is good, may have messed up once, but you cannot emotionally affect him or his self confidence. It if we fail him, it'll be adverse. If we pass him, at least some baggage will go. And that is the judgment a good mentor uses. That how to encourage the mentee. If it's not life and death or earth shattering or extremely sinful, it's a viva. But a negative effect of a reviva, failure again the second time, can have major consequences. Even if it's a basic diffidence. A job interview in future, he says, oh, vivas are dreaded, interviews are dreaded. The moment I am telling the story, so I know why they did it. But what I'm getting energized and motivated by is the fact that there is sense that I have learned this because of this experience. So to me, this incident is the greatest mentoring experience anyone can have ever.
wonderful. So, to be very honest, after this story, I don't have more questions, and for sure, I will be reading that book again. I have a Kindle also with me.
Okay. I also, thanks to my sessions, keep reading. कभी भी रेफर कर लिया because to be fair, it's not a bad book.
So, for sure, this book is the guideline for the mentors, or people can use it in their organizations also, even for the discussions over the concept of mental morphosis. People can use this book, and I would request our readers to go for the book. And in case if we get the more questions from the readers, we'll request sir again to be online.
That's what you do. I mean, I'm used to this. It's a pain, but what to do?
So thank you once again, sir, for being a part of Naharjito Bookathon.
Thank
And
you.
for sure, it's a guarantee from the book that yes, personally, I can recommend this book. That this book has so many things to talk about. And again, underlying point is language is simple, where layman can connect to it. So go for a book. मैं इनकी तारीफ नहीं करूंगी, ये इनको जरूरत नहीं है किसी और तारीफ की, मैं बुक की तारीफ कर रही हूँ. सो आप बुक जरूर पढ़िए एंड डू गेट योर कॉपी एंड शेयर योर क्वेश्चंस विद अस. वी आर हियर. ठीक है. थैंक यू सो मच सर.
Okay.